The sun shone brightly over the infinity pool, reflecting thousands of tiny points of light on the crystal-clear water. The scent of sunscreen and salty breeze filled the air. Guests strolled by with towels and hats, laughing and chatting animatedly. Every detail of the resort exuded luxury and tranquility, from the perfectly lined palm trees to the carefully positioned umbrellas. Vanessa Whitmore, blonde, with flawless skin and sparkling jewelry, arrived with a confident stride, holding her wide-brimmed hat. She looked around, assessing each guest and every detail of the space, as if inspecting her own territory. Her friend Claire walked beside her, trying to keep up with Vanessa's fast pace and critical gaze. The soft sound of water lapping against the pool edge mixed with children's laughter and the clinking of cocktail glasses. Vanessa adjusted her sunglasses, watching the guests with a look of disapproval. Every laugh, every joyful gesture seemed to irritate her, as if this perfect scene did not belong to her world of power and status. In the background, a waitress balanced a tray full of colorful cocktails. The sweet aroma of tropical fruits mingled with the subtle scent of garden flowers. Vanessa observed everything with calculating eyes, analyzing each detail as if every person were a piece on a large board she needed to control. Then she saw David, a black man, short hair, well-groomed skin, diving into the nearby pool, smiling at the children playing in the water. He wore no expensive clothes, jewelry, or flashy accessories. There was something natural and serene about him, a presence that completely contrasted with the meticulously curated environment around him. Vanessa frowned, disapproving of the simple way he enjoyed himself. "Who is that?" she murmured to Claire, her voice dripping with disdain. Claire shrugged, but her expression showed she felt slightly embarrassed by her friend's judgment. The contrast between them was impossible to ignore. David greeted the pool staff with a genuine smile. He helped a child climb onto a float, and, without realizing it, earned small looks of admiration from those passing by. Vanessa watched everything, unable to understand why someone so simple seemed so comfortable and confident in such a luxurious setting. The socialite then stood, adjusting her wide-brimmed hat and the jewels that sparkled under the sun. Her thin heels sank slightly into the poolside sand. Every movement she made conveyed wealth and control, but also a certain unease, because at that moment she felt something she could not name. With a delicate gesture, Vanessa discreetly called the resort manager. He approached, elegant in his blue suit, with a polite smile, but visibly tense. Vanessa spoke quietly but firmly, making it clear she was displeased with David's presence. "I can't relax with someone like that near me," she said, her eyes fixed on David. "I paid a lot to be among people at my level." The manager swallowed nervously, unsure of exactly how to respond. He knew dealing with wealthy guests required tact, but he also could not ignore the obvious. The man in the pool was just as much a guest as anyone else. David, unaware of the tension, continued playing in the water. He smiled at everyone, spoke to the children, and waved at the staff. Every gesture seemed to convey genuine confidence and joy, something Vanessa had never learned to value. For her, everything was about appearance, status, and control. Claire approached Vanessa, trying to ease the situation. "Vanessa, maybe it's best not to cause a scene. He doesn't seem like a real problem." Vanessa huffed, but her gaze remained fixed on David. She felt a mix of irritation and curiosity. Why did he not seem intimidated by the environment? The pool was full of activity. Guests laughed, dove in, and chatted. The blue sky reflected on the water like a mirror. and the gentle breeze carried the scent of tropical fruits. Every detail highlighted the contrast between the lightness of the place and the weight of Vanessa's judgment. Around them, other guests began to notice the tension. Some curious glances turned toward Vanessa, sensing her disdain. She didn't care, but still felt a twinge of embarrassment. The situation forced her to confront something she would never admit. Maybe not everything could be controlled. The manager approached again, polite and patient. "Ma'am, everyone here is welcome. We cannot treat anyone differently." Vanessa huffed indignantly. "This isn't about treatment, it's about standards. I paid a lot for a different experience." David overheard the conversation from a distance, but kept his calm smile. He didn't react to the hostility. His presence radiated effortless confidence and dignity, something Vanessa had never seen before. Her perception of control began to waver, even though she didn't want to admit it. She then sat back down on her lounge chair, crossing her legs elegantly. She watched David with critical eyes, trying to figure out who he was and why he seemed so unbothered. Every movement he made reinforced a reality she could not accept. He was comfortable, happy, and secure, without any luxury. Vanessa took a deep breath and looked around, noticing every gesture, every smile, every detail of the resort. She tried to maintain her socialite poise, but something inside her began to question her own arrogance. Maybe she was being silently judged by the other guests as well. Vanessa stood up once more, adjusting her hat and taking a deep breath. She decided to call the manager for the third time, her patience nearly gone. "This is unacceptable. I want something done," she said, her voice firm and direct. The manager looked at David and then at Vanessa. "He's a guest like any other, ma'am. We cannot act differently." Vanessa exhaled slowly, holding back her irritation. Every word from the manager was a reminder that not everything could be controlled. Vanessa closed her eyes for a moment, trying to manage the uncomfortable feeling growing inside her. The entire resort seemed to breathe in harmony, while she felt out of place. Claire, noticing the tension, lightly touched Vanessa's arm. "Maybe we should just enjoy the day, Vanessa. It's not worth stressing over." Vanessa opened her eyes, staring at David once again. Something inside her began to shift, even if she wasn't ready to admit it. Vanessa sat on the lounge chair, watching David in the pool. Her disdain mingled with a strange curiosity. She didn't know it yet, but this simple, confident man was about to change her perspective entirely and transform her life in ways she had never imagined. Night had fallen, and the dining hall was lit by crystal chandeliers that reflected the light into hundreds of tiny prisms, casting a soft glow over the impeccably decorated tables. The scent of sophisticated cuisine mingled with tropical flowers arranged in lavish displays. Every detail of the place exuded luxury and care, conveying a sense of meticulously planned perfection. Vanessa entered, accompanied by Claire, wearing a long, elegant gown that shimmered under the chandelier's light. Her fine heels echoed on the polished floor, and she adjusted her diamond earrings with a calculated gesture. Each step was a demonstration of status, a silent reminder to everyone that she belonged to the elite. She looked around, watching other guests laugh, toast, and chat animatedly. Every smile and every display of affection seemed to unsettle her, as if she couldn't relax without feeling in absolute control of her surroundings. The silent tension within her grew with each passing second. Claire, noticing her friend's rigid posture, murmured, "Breathe, Vanessa. Just enjoy it." Vanessa shook her head, squaring her shoulders, but her eyes couldn't stop scanning the room, assessing every detail with surgical precision. The master of ceremonies stepped onto the stage, wearing a flawless suit and a warm smile. He held a silver microphone that caught the light, and all the guests turned to listen. A murmur of anticipation rippled through the room, creating an electric energy in the air. "Ladies and gentlemen, It is an honor to introduce the owner of our resort, Mr. David Williams." The MC's voice rang out, and everyone stood to applaud. The hall seemed to vibrate with collective surprise and admiration. Vanessa froze for a moment, the water glass trembling slightly in her hand. Her heart raced, and a sudden heat rose to her face. She blinked several times, unable to believe that the man she had deemed simple and out of place was, in fact, the owner of the resort. David entered the room with confident, unhurried steps, smiling at everyone he passed. He waved, shook hands, and greeted children, showing humility and presence all at once. His demeanor carried a quiet authority, something Vanessa had never seen before. The murmuring in the hall grew as guests began to realize who he was. Some exchanged surprised glances, others whispered in admiration, while Vanessa felt a knot forming in her throat. All her certainty about status and control began to crumble. Claire looked at Vanessa, eyes wide. "It's him. He's the owner?" Vanessa only nodded, unable to speak. The disdain she had felt moments earlier was replaced with a mix of shock and embarrassment. David stopped at the center of the hall, looking at everyone with a genuine smile. He paused, taking in the atmosphere, and then spoke in a calm, assured voice. "I hope everyone is enjoying our facilities. Here, every person is welcome and everyone has their place." Vanessa's silence was almost tangible. She sat down slowly, feeling the weight of her own judgments and prejudices. Every glance she exchanged with other guests reinforced the feeling that she had been exposed, even though no one had said a word. She watched the resort staff greet David with respect, but without exaggeration. He treated them as equals, smiling and praising their efforts, showing that leadership didn't need arrogance to be effective. Vanessa felt a pang of shame she could not ignore. Claire tried to whisper something to ease the tension. "He seems different, doesn't he?" Vanessa only nodded, speechless. A mix of frustration, curiosity, and admiration grew inside her, making it difficult to maintain her usual pose of absolute control. David took to the stage for a few quick words, but his presence filled the entire hall. He spoke clearly and confidently, yet with humility, captivating all the guests around him. Vanessa felt each word sink into her consciousness, challenging her beliefs about wealth and power. As he spoke, Vanessa noticed her own hands trembling slightly. She had never felt so small before someone who, to everyone's eyes, seemed simple, but in truth possessed everything. Every gesture he made seemed to carry authority, without needing any ostentation. A murmur of approval spread through the hall as David stepped down from the stage, greeting the guests again. Vanessa tried to steady her breathing, but the sense of vulnerability grew. She had underestimated the man, and now reality was confronting her directly. She noticed how he spoke with the staff, listening attentively to every detail, never showing impatience or arrogance. Vanessa began to realize that true leadership is not measured by appearance, but by respect and empathy. Claire remained by her side, noticing the subtle change in Vanessa. "You seem different, quieter." Vanessa looked away, unable to admit she was reflecting on everything she had misjudged. David smiled at some children who approached, helping them find seats at the tables. Vanessa watched every move, feeling a pang of shame as she compared it to her own obsession with status. She had never seen such genuine care without self-interest. The soft background music filled the hall, blending with the sound of cutlery and hushed conversations. The elegant, luxurious setting contrasted with the discomfort Vanessa carried. Every detail of the resort seemed to reinforce the silent lesson she was learning. She noticed some guests exchanging glances and whispering, perhaps sensing her unease. Vanessa felt exposed, yet intrigued. The initial shock began to turn into genuine curiosity, something she hadn't felt in years. David continued greeting everyone without hurry, radiating both confidence and empathy. Vanessa began to pay attention to the small details. His kindness toward the staff, his attention to the children, his quiet respect for every guest. She took a deep breath, trying to absorb the unspoken lesson in that moment. Every gesture from David seemed to teach that respect and humanity were worth far more than any ostentation or status. Vanessa felt a pang of regret as she remembered all the times she had judged others by appearances. Claire discreetly took her hand. "It's going to be all right, Vanessa. Just watch." Vanessa nodded, realizing she needed to learn the lesson before taking any action. The tension began to slowly dissolve, giving way to reflection. David stopped in front of a group of staff, shook hands, and listened to suggestions, showing genuine interest. Vanessa watched, impressed. He was powerful, yet he didn't need to prove anything to anyone. That unsettled and inspired her at the same time. Dinner went on, and Vanessa kept observing every detail, every smile, every act of kindness. She felt something inside her shifting. The arrogance she carried was slowly dissolving before that calm and confident presence. Claire whispered, "Maybe he's exactly what we need to learn to be better." Vanessa simply took a deep breath, absorbing the sense of humility beginning to grow within her. She wouldn't admit it yet, but something inside her was being transformed. The night went on, and the hall remained full of laughter, conversations, and curious glances. Vanessa sat quietly, watching David interact with everyone. Every gesture of his seemed to carry a silent lesson about leadership, empathy, and humanity. She finally realized that all her previous judgments had been superficial. The man she had once scorned seemed to teach more about life in a few minutes than she had learned in years of luxury and appearances. As the soft music played, Vanessa looked at David once more. He didn't notice her, but she felt something inside her change. The initial shock and discomfort had turned into curiosity, respect, and a quiet desire to learn. Dinner came to an end, but the impression of that night would stay with Vanessa forever. The simple, confident man she had judged had shown her a reality she had never considered. True wealth is not measured by status or appearance, but by character, empathy, and presence. She stood slowly, taking a deep breath, still absorbing every detail of what she had just witnessed. The scene in the dining hall had planted the first seed of transformation within her, and Vanessa felt her life would never be the same again. The hotel room was a quiet refuge after the intensity of the dinner. The soft glow of the bedside lamps cast delicate shadows on the beige walls, and the gentle breeze drifting in from the balcony carried the salty scent of the sea. Vanessa entered slowly, closing the door behind her, feeling the weight of the night and of her own vulnerability. She let the long dress slide down her body and sat at the edge of the bed, exhaling deeply. The jewelry shimmered in the dim light, but at that moment they seemed only like reminders of a life that was not as perfect as she made it appear. Behind the flawless image of a socialite, Vanessa felt the ground slipping from beneath her feet. She looked into the full-length mirror in front of her. The woman reflected there was elegant, confident, and powerful, but her eyes revealed exhaustion, fear, and a secret no one knew. Behind all the appearances, Vanessa was bankrupt, and the trip to the resort was not just a vacation, it was her last chance to convince David to become her business partner. The silence of the room seemed to amplify every thought. She recalled the countless meetings with bankers, lawyers, and investors, all ending with closed doors. Each rejection had driven her to build an armor of status and arrogance, trying to hide her vulnerability. Now, facing David, everything seemed on the verge of collapse. As she leaned back against the soft white pillows, Vanessa closed her eyes and was transported back to her childhood. She was only 10 years old, sitting at the kitchen table in her modest home. The smell of frying bacon mixed with the distant sound of the television in the living room. She looked outside, Where other children walked to school with new backpacks and clean shoes, her own shoes were worn, and her simple clothes did nothing to hide the marks of a humble life. For the first time, Vanessa felt the sting of being invisible and looked down upon, of not belonging to a world that seemed to shine for others. Her mother placed a small hand on her shoulder, her tired smile still full of love. "Vanessa, you are special. One day, everyone will see what you can do." The words became etched in her mind, but along with them was born a silent pressure. She needed to earn respect and status at any cost. Her father, sitting silently beside them, only nodded with quiet pride. Vanessa remembered looking at him and promising herself she would never again feel small or worthless. From that moment on, her life was built on appearances, wealth, and control, trying to fill the emptiness she had felt as a child. The flashback faded, and Vanessa opened her eyes, facing the silent room. The contrast between that vulnerable little girl and the polished socialite was striking. Everything she had built seemed solid, but in truth it was fragile, founded on a facade that anyone could see through.
She rose and walked to the balcony, feeling the night breeze brush against her face. The sea stretched out before her, calm and deep, reflecting the full moon. Each wave seemed to whisper about choices, consequences, and secrets kept for far too long. Vanessa rested her hands on the railing and took a deep breath, trying to organize her thoughts. David. He was constantly present in her mind. The dinner had been a shock. The man she had despised was, in fact, the owner of the resort. Her arrogance now seemed not only pointless but ridiculous. She recalled the expressions around the room, looks of surprise, hushed whispers, and the silent admiration everyone held for David. Shame washed over her for having judged someone solely by appearance. Yet at the same time, she felt something new, a spark of curiosity about who he really was and how he had reached such a position without flaunting it. Vanessa turned back to the bed and sat down again, burying her face in her hands. The weight of her entire facade-laden life pressed down on her in that moment. She was about to beg David for a partnership, but she didn't want him to see the truth. Her bankruptcy, her desperation, the vulnerability she had hidden for years. She remembered all the contacts she had made, all the doors that had closed on her. Every failure had hardened her, shaping her into someone who believed status was everything and that appearance mattered more than character. But David, with his simplicity and natural confidence, was challenging every notion she had about power. The socialite took a deep breath and closed her eyes. She needed to think of a plan to convince him, but she also felt something unfamiliar growing inside her. A quiet desire to learn, to become someone better, to avoid repeating the same mistakes of the past. She began to plan in her mind how to approach David strategically. She needed to show value, demonstrate intelligence and capability without appearing desperate. Every move would be crucial, every word measured, every gesture calculated. As she paced the room, Vanessa took in the details around her: heavy curtains that partly blocked the moonlight, carefully arranged pillows, and the soft carpet under her feet. Everything reflected the perfection of the resort, and she felt small in the face of such harmony. She sat down again, holding her own hand, trying to steady her nerves. She had to turn the situation into an opportunity, but for the first time in a long while, she felt she might learn something genuine, something that couldn't be bought with money or status. Vanessa looked at the phone on the nightstand. She could call a lawyer or reach out to investors, but she knew none of that would solve her immediate problem. The solution stood before her in David, the man she had judged without knowing. She took a deep breath and murmured to herself, "I need to understand him and maybe understand myself." The night moved on slowly, and the room's silence seemed to conspire in favor of a quiet transformation. the distant sound of the sea mixed with the chirping of crickets, creating a serene and hypnotic soundtrack. Vanessa lay down on the bed, closing her eyes, imagining what it would be like to work with David, to learn from him, and perhaps to confront her own prejudices and weaknesses. As the moon cast its gentle light across the room, she realized she could no longer rely solely on her looks and status. If she wanted to save her situation, she would have to take risks, expose herself, and perhaps truly change. A flutter stirred in her stomach, a mix of fear and excitement. For the first time, she was willing to face someone without the armor of a socialite, ready to discover what lay beneath the facade she had built for so long. The room seemed to breathe with her, silent and welcoming, as every thought revolved around David, the resort, and the challenge she knew awaited her. She took another deep breath and rose, walking to the work desk in the corner. There she began to mentally draft the plan she would use the next day. Every word, every gesture, every step would be critical. Meanwhile, the memory of her childhood briefly returned, reminding her how deeply the need for approval and security had shaped her. She realized that the change ahead would not only be strategic, but also personal, something that would touch her heart and her way of seeing the world. Vanessa looked at her reflection in the balcony glass, gazing at the sea and the resort lights. For the first time, she felt a mixture of hope and fear. She knew her life was about to change, and that this night would only be the beginning of a profound transformation. She sat back down on the bed, breathing deeply, closing her eyes, and letting the night embrace her. Every thought about David, about herself, and about the future blended with the sound of the waves, preparing her for the challenge that would come the next morning. At last, Vanessa lay down, sensing something within her beginning to crack. The armor of status and appearance was starting to give way. The silent transformation was underway, and the next morning would bring not only opportunities, but lessons that would change her life forever.
The morning sun filtered through the palm leaves, creating patches of light that danced across the stone paths of the resort's garden. The air was fresh, with a gentle breeze carrying the sweet scent of tropical flowers and the distant salt of the sea. Every detail seemed carefully designed to convey peace and harmony. Vanessa walked through the garden corridors, her light dress swaying with the wind. Her footsteps echoed softly, blending with the distant song of birds and the sound of water from the fountains scattered throughout the grounds. She tried to absorb the serenity of the place, but the anticipation of her meeting with David kept her from fully relaxing. David was waiting for her beside a stone fountain, surrounded by neatly trimmed shrubs and small, colorful flowers. He wore simple clothes, perfectly tailored, projecting authority without ostentation. When he saw her, he smiled warmly yet firmly, exuding both confidence and expectation. "Good morning, Vanessa," he said, his voice calm and steady, almost as if he controlled the very atmosphere. "Today will be different. I want you to see the resort in a new way, but I also want you to see yourself differently." Vanessa frowned slightly, surprised and intrigued. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to hide the anxiety rising within her. David only smiled, the kind of smile that seemed to understand everything without needing to explain too much. He began walking along the garden paths, gesturing to highlight the natural beauty and organization of the space. Every plant, every fountain, every decorative detail reflected care and attention. Vanessa noticed that it wasn't just about aesthetics, it was about respect, hard work, and dedication. David then stopped in front of a group of employees, both young and experienced, all engaged in different tasks, tending to plants, setting tables for breakfast, organizing equipment for guests. He greeted each of them individually, listening intently to every word. "I want you to spend the day with them, Vanessa, not as a socialite, not as an investor, as someone who truly wants to understand the value of work and the people around you." Vanessa felt a flutter in her stomach. It was exactly what she needed to do to secure her partnership, but she also knew it would be challenging. Working without status, without control, without privileges, something she had never done before. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. David continued, "If you can understand and respect each person here, you'll learn more about leadership than any book or piece of business advice could ever teach you." The garden was full of life. The sun shone brightly, the water from the fountains reflected light, and the distant sound of birds and laughter mingled with the fresh scent of newly watered plants. Every detail seemed to reinforce the importance of the moment. Vanessa could no longer hide behind appearances. She began by helping set up the tables for breakfast. Her hands, accustomed to holding crystal glasses and golden paper clips, were now carrying heavy tablecloths and utensils. The feeling of simple yet real physical effort was strange and uncomfortable. A young employee, Marcus, approached and smiled. "Can I show you the best way to arrange this?" Vanessa nodded, a little hesitant. He patiently demonstrated each step, and she realized that her meticulousness was less helpful than her willingness to learn. As she worked, Vanessa observed the other employees. There were silent stories in every look, every gesture. People who struggled every day, facing difficulties she had never imagined, yet carrying them with dignity and pride. She began to feel a twinge of humility. Every simple task, every instruction followed carefully, seemed to open her mind to a reality money could never buy: respect for effort and true dedication. David watched from a distance, his discreet smile showing quiet approval. He knew that each challenge was a lesson not just about empathy, but about self-awareness. Vanessa, though still tense, was beginning to understand that she was being guided to see something far greater than business. Children played near the fountain, running and laughing, and Vanessa instinctively helped one of them retrieve a toy that had fallen into the water. The simplicity of the gesture made her heart race. She felt genuine joy, something luxury and status had never given her. At lunchtime, Vanessa had to serve some guests alongside the staff. She spilled juice a few times, but laughed at herself, realizing that making mistakes wasn't the end of the world. The lightness of the experience contrasted with her former need for perfection and control. Later, she helped clean the pool area, picking up towels and arranging chairs. Each simple gesture seemed to reveal a quiet truth. Leadership and respect do not come from appearance, but from genuine care for people and the space around you. David approached her, observing her progress. "You're starting to understand," he said calmly. "It's not about being perfect. It's about being present, humble, and attentive." Vanessa nodded, feeling that the message went far beyond physical work. She began to reflect on her own life, recalling her humble childhood, her struggles to be accepted, and the constant fear of not belonging. Each memory, each silent pain, seemed to gain new meaning as she lived through the day. As she walked through the garden to deliver some orders to guests, Vanessa noticed the difference in the way people looked at her. There was no judgment, only genuine interaction. For the first time, she felt she could be valued for what she did, not for who she appeared to be. The day moved slowly, and the sun tilted in the sky, casting long shadows across the garden. Vanessa sat briefly under the shade of a palm tree, watching the staff's routine and the serene beauty of the resort. The tranquility of the setting seemed to touch something deep inside her. She realized that each challenge, each simple task, every interaction with the staff was transforming something within her. The arrogance and prejudice she carried were beginning to give way to empathy and genuine understanding. David appeared by her side, offering her water and a smile of approval. Vanessa felt a surge of pride, not for what she had achieved financially, but for what she was learning about herself. He led her to one of the less visible areas of the garden, where employees rested and shared personal stories. Vanessa listened intently, realizing that each story carried strength, resilience, and humanity. She was moved by the quiet courage of these people. As the day drew to a close, Vanessa reflected on how she had judged the world so superficially for so long. She understood that status, wealth, and appearance could never replace the true understanding of effort and human dignity. The afternoon breeze carried the scent of the sea and the distant sound of children playing. Vanessa felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years, a sense of connection to something greater than herself. David watched from afar, satisfied with the silent progress Vanessa was making. He knew that each hands-on experience, each challenge faced without privilege, was shaping not only her vision of leadership, but also her character. As the sun began to set, Vanessa sat on a bench in the garden, breathing deeply and taking in every detail. The scent of flowers, the sound of water, the genuine smiles around her. For the first time, she felt she was learning something no amount of money could buy. She realized that this challenge was not just about partnership or business. It was about personal transformation, about abandoning prejudice and accepting the humanity of others and her own. Each moment in the garden seemed to etch a deep lesson into her heart. The end of the day found Vanessa gazing toward the horizon, the sky tinged with orange and pink, reflecting over the calm sea. She felt hope and fear, emotion and introspection. The day had been an experience that would change her life, and the next step with David promised even more unexpected lessons and revelations. The morning sun lit every corner of the resort, reflecting off polished surfaces and highlighting the lushness of the palm trees and well-tended gardens. Vanessa entered the service areas wearing a simple apron, feeling the weight of the previous day and the anticipation of what was to come. Every step she took seemed to mark the beginning of a new stage in her transformation. She was greeted by Marcus, the young employee who had guided her the day before. "Ready for today's challenge?" he asked, smiling warmly. Vanessa nodded, feeling a mix of nervousness and curiosity grow inside her. The first challenge was to clean and organize the outdoor kitchen, a busy and noisy area. Vanessa took a deep breath, noticing the strong scent of spices, oil, and heat. Each task required physical effort and attention to detail, something she was not used to. As she wiped down counters and washed utensils, Vanessa felt her arms tremble. Every simple movement revealed just how far she was from the real world of hard work. She realized that wealth and status taught neither endurance nor patience. A more experienced employee, Mr. Thompson, approached. "Don't worry, you'll get the hang of it quickly. Just watch and learn." Vanessa gave a timid smile, absorbing every instruction carefully. Each gesture seemed to be a silent lesson in humility. While stacking plates, Vanessa saw a young waitress drop a tray of drinks. She hesitated, but decided to help pick everything up. The simple gesture brought a genuine smile to the waitress's face, and Vanessa felt a spark of real joy she hadn't experienced in years. David appeared in the courtyard, watching quietly. He said nothing, but his attentive gaze conveyed silent approval. Vanessa realized that every action was being evaluated not by status, but by the sincerity and dedication shown. Next, she helped in the laundry, folding heavy towels and organizing uniforms. The physical labor was exhausting, but the feeling of genuine usefulness began to fill a space that money could never reach. She felt proud of her honest effort. During a break, Vanessa looked out toward the horizon and remembered her humble childhood, the fear of not belonging, and the silent promise never to feel small again.
Each task she completed now seemed to reconcile that little girl with the woman she had become. While helping to organize supplies, she noticed small details she had previously ignored. The care the employees showed for one another, the quiet respect for collective work. Each observation deepened her admiration for the world she had once dismissed out of prejudice.
A guest approached, asking for help with information about tours. Still feeling unsure, Vanessa offered to assist. As she guided him with attentiveness and kindness, she realized that empathy and genuine presence were more valuable than any social etiquette. Marcus smiled subtly at her, noticing her progress. "You're doing really well, Vanessa. Just keep observing and learning." She nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and humility growing in her chest. While organizing the storage area, Vanessa came across a forgotten item, an old photograph of the resort in its early years. Looking at the historical record, she felt the weight of David's effort and of everyone who had built it, reinforcing the lesson that dedication outweighs appearances. She knelt down to rearrange heavy boxes and once again felt the physical fatigue, but this time the effort brought satisfaction. Each movement became a reminder that real value is measured by effort, not by luxury or appearance. During cleaning, a young guest approached her afraid of getting lost. Vanessa helped her find her parents, feeling a genuine tenderness. The child's smile and silent gratitude reinforced the quiet transformation taking place inside her. David came over, offering simple instructions to help with a complex logistics task. Vanessa noticed that he treated her as an equal, not as an investor or a socialite. That attitude deepened her admiration and made her heart beat faster, blending respect with curiosity. As she delivered supplies to different departments, Vanessa began to notice patterns. Every employee had their importance, every task was essential. For the first time, she saw the resort as a living organism, not just a stage for luxury. The afternoon went on, and Vanessa sat briefly to rest. Her hands were marked by the work, but she smiled silently, feeling something she had never experienced before: satisfaction from genuine effort and connection with others. She realized that her former disdain and prejudice had not only limited her, but also isolated her from real human experiences. Every gesture she made now brought her closer to empathy, understanding, and personal growth. As the sun began to set, Vanessa looked at David, who watched from a distance. She felt silent gratitude, knowing that this challenge was not just about business, but about personal transformation. For the first time, she understood that true learning required humility, presence, and the courage to change. The day ended with Vanessa exhausted but deeply fulfilled. The resort, with its vibrant, bustling service areas, had taught her something no amount of money could buy: respect for effort, genuine empathy, and the quiet strength of those who build with dedication. The meeting room was elegantly decorated, with walls in soft ivory tones and a polished dark wood table that reflected the gentle light of the chandeliers. The atmosphere exuded power and sophistication, yet also invited focus and reflection. Vanessa entered, still wearing the morning's apron, feeling the contrast between her simple appearance and the grandeur of the room. David was already seated at the head of the table, his expression serious yet welcoming. He gestured for Vanessa to come closer. "Today we're going to see how much you've really learned," he said, his voice firm, leaving no room for misunderstanding, yet free of judgment. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the previous night and the long day of work. Every task and every interaction in the garden and service areas now made sense. David wasn't just testing her skills, he was testing her ability to reflect on her own prejudices and limitations. "Vanessa, you know this resort doesn't operate solely on luxury or appearances, right?" David began, looking into her eyes. It works because every person here understands the value of what they do. Today, I want you to prove that you understand it too." He then presented the final challenge. Each employee had prepared a small proposal to improve the resort, and Vanessa would have to choose 3 ideas and implement them in a real simulation, demonstrating leadership, empathy, and an understanding of teamwork. Vanessa's heart raced. This was her chance to show intelligence, but it also demanded humility. She realized it wasn't enough to just complete tasks. She needed to understand each perspective, value every opinion, and act without letting her ego get in the way. As she reviewed the proposals, Vanessa remembered the stories she had heard from the employees: personal struggles, quiet victories, and constant dedication. Each idea represented not only creativity, but also courage, resilience, and passion. She felt genuine respect growing inside her. David watched her closely, measuring not only her choices, but also her posture, her attention to detail, and her ability to truly listen. Vanessa realized that this was the real test of character, more important than any financial transaction. She carefully selected the 3 proposals, which involved improving team communication, optimizing guest service, and launching a sustainability project for the resort. Each decision was made to honor the employee's effort and vision, not simply to impress David. As she implemented the ideas, Vanessa worked side by side with the employees. Some whispered in surprise. The socialite who once seemed so distant was now sweating, laughing, and learning with them. She felt a genuine joy she had never experienced at luxury events or social gatherings. David approached, smiling discreetly. "You're doing very well, Vanessa. It's not about perfection. It's about presence and empathy. Are you starting to understand the true value of leadership?" Vanessa nodded, moved, feeling a mix of pride and humility she couldn't put into words. At the end of the exercise, everyone gathered in the room. David stood and looked at Vanessa. "Today, you proved that you can learn, listen, and show respect. More importantly, you proved that you are capable of growth." His tone carried approval, but also a silent challenge for the future. Then he revealed the unexpected twist. "If you want the partnership you're seeking, you'll have to continue this learning with me, but know that any lapse in judgment to prejudice will be immediately visible. This partnership is not just financial. It's about character, vision, and humility." Vanessa felt a chill in her stomach. It was exactly what she needed to hear and accept. Every effort, every discomfort, and every lesson from the past day had led to this moment. She knew her life was about to change, and that this partnership would demand more than money. It would require real transformation. Silence filled the room, broken only by the faint sound of leaves rustling on the veranda. Vanessa took a deep breath, feeling the weight and significance of the moment. For the first time, she was ready not only for a business partnership, but to face her own prejudices and fears, honestly and genuinely. David smiled for the first time in a wide, sincere way. "So, Vanessa, are you ready to start this journey with me?" She looked at him, her eyes shining with determination and emotion. "Yes, I'm ready." The future was uncertain, but for the first time, she felt she could face it with an open heart. The morning sun illuminated the hotel lobby, reflecting off the polished surfaces and creating a striking contrast with the calm of the early day. Vanessa entered, feeling the weight of her new role alongside David. Each step seemed to echo the responsibility she now carried, not just as a partner, but as someone who needed to prove her transformation. David walked beside her silently, observing her reactions and choices. "Today, you'll put everything you've learned into practice," he said, his voice firm yet encouraging. Vanessa took a deep breath, feeling the mix of fear and determination growing inside her. The first challenge arose immediately, a guest dissatisfied with the service from the previous night. Vanessa had to listen carefully, show empathy, and find quick solutions. Every word needed to convey sincerity, not just formality or superficial charm. She approached the guest with a genuine smile. "I'm very sorry for the inconvenience. We'll fix this immediately." Her attentive and sincere tone surprised the man, who relaxed upon realizing she was speaking from the heart. As she resolved the situation, Vanessa realized that her former arrogant behavior would never have allowed her to truly listen. The experience was uncomfortable, but liberating. Every problem solved with empathy increased her confidence and understanding of human value. Next, she helped at the reception, handling complicated reservations and demanding guests. Each interaction tested her patience and attention to detail, reminding her that leadership is not about status, but about presence and genuine care. Marcus and the other staff watched discreetly, surprised by Vanessa's transformation. She wasn't just completing tasks, she listened, learned, and valued every opinion, something she would never have done before. A respectful silence formed around her. During breakfast, Vanessa helped serve tables, organized utensils, and even assisted a family that had gotten confused with their schedule. Each simple gesture reinforced the lesson David wanted to teach. True leadership requires action, empathy, and presence. An unexpected challenge arose when an important guest arrived without a reservation and demanded immediate attention. Vanessa had to quickly organize rooms, staff, and personalize service. The pressure was intense, but she felt a quiet confidence growing within her. David observed closely, merely smiling discreetly. He knew that Vanessa's transformation wasn't only in her execution, but in the way she faced challenges without letting ego or prejudice dominate her decisions. While assisting with cleaning logistics, Vanessa remembered her childhood and the constant fear of not belonging. She realized that fear no longer held power over her. It was being replaced with understanding, empathy, and courage. A staff member accidentally dropped a tray full of dishes. Vanessa ran to help, and together they reorganized everything. The gesture seemed simple, but inside it symbolized humility and partnership she had never experienced before. Later, Vanessa organized an event in the main hall, ensuring everything was perfect for the guests. Every detail required attention, patience, and collaboration with the staff, reinforcing that leadership is measured not by status, but by practical action and mutual respect. When the day ended, Vanessa and David walked through the hotel lobby. The illuminated space reflected a sense of achievement and learning. She felt that something within her had changed deeply and irreversibly. David looked at her and said, "Today, you didn't just demonstrate competence. You showed character, humility, and empathy. That is the foundation of any true partnership." Vanessa took a deep breath, feeling emotion and gratitude. For the first time, status and appearance didn't matter, only her growth and her ability to transform her own life.
The night sky covered the resort with a blanket of sparkling stars, reflecting on the calm sea and softly illuminating the palm trees and gardens. Vanessa walked beside David, feeling the cool breeze brush her face, carrying with it the sense of closure and learning that the past few days had brought. The distant sound of waves mixed with the murmur of fountains and the laughter of satisfied guests. Every detail of the resort seemed to pulse with life, demonstrating the impact of each employee's effort and the lessons Vanessa had absorbed. David stopped in front of a large balcony overlooking the sea. "Look around, Vanessa. Every corner of this place is the result of dedication, respect, and hard work. It's not just luxury, it's applied humanity." Vanessa took in the scene, feeling a pang of humility and admiration. She looked at him, her eyes shining. I never truly understood what leadership, responsibility, and empathy mean." David just smiled, knowing her words were sincere and filled with emotion. The wind brought back memories of Vanessa's childhood, of the constant need for approval and the sense of invisibility she had carried for years. For the first time, she realized she could leave that facade behind and still be valued for who she truly was. David guided her to a garden lit by delicate lanterns. "Before we formalize our partnership, I want you to know something important. Business is made of numbers, but great partnerships are built on trust and character." Vanessa felt her heart race, understanding that this was the ultimate lesson. She took a deep breath and replied, "I'm ready. Ready to work with honesty, humility, and a willingness to learn, not just for success, but for the real value of people and their work." Her words came with conviction, reflecting her inner transformation. At that moment, a guest approached to personally thank her for the day's service. Vanessa smiled and interacted naturally, showing genuine empathy. David watched silently, pleased with her growth in facing real situations. A final twist came when David revealed, "Actually, Vanessa, I've been observing every detail of your performance without you knowing. You've proven that you're not only capable of learning, but also of transforming yourself. That is worth more than any resume or wealth." Vanessa felt a mix of surprise and emotion. Everything she had done, every gesture, every decision, had been truly evaluated, and she finally felt recognized for who she really was, not for the facade she had always shown. David then extended his hand with a sincere smile. "If you still want the partnership, it's yours, but with one condition. Continue growing, learning, and respecting every person around you." Vanessa shook his hand firmly, feeling her emotions overflow. The sound of the waves and the glow of the stars created a magical atmosphere, as if the universe itself acknowledged the journey of transformation she had lived. Every step, every challenge, and every lesson culminated in that moment of personal victory. Vanessa looked at the resort, now not just as a business place, but as a space of life, learning, and human connection. She realized that true wealth was not in bank accounts, but in character, empathy, and dedication. The quiet of the night garden seemed to embrace her, enveloping every emotion and lesson. For the first time in years, she felt at peace with herself, knowing that she had genuinely changed and that her future was aligned with real values. As they walked back to the resort, David said, "Welcome to the partnership and to the true path of success." Vanessa smiled, feeling her emotions overflow. For the first time, she knew she didn't need masks, status, or appearances to be someone valuable. The resort glowed softly under the light of the stars and the moon, reflecting not just beauty, but Vanessa's transformation. The journey had been intense, but every challenge, every twist, and every lesson had shaped not only a future partner, but a more conscious, empathetic, and strong woman. As the moon reflected on the calm sea, Vanessa smiled, realizing that every challenge, gesture, and twist had molded her into someone stronger and more aware. True wealth at last was clear, in respect for people and the value of genuine effort. And you, who followed this story, remember, great changes begin with small actions and the courage to open yourself to learning. If you enjoyed this story and want more emotional and inspirational content, follow our channel and stay tuned for the next adventures that will touch your heart.